There's so many stories of ghosts and aliens and cryptid creatures and all these amazing stories that are out there. And if just one person is telling the absolute truth, and then we have to completely reevaluate everything that we've been taught.
Today's guest is Justin L. Shaw. I really relate and love how he takes a very humorous approach to some dark things.
Having that as a skill set, I no longer, want to just go into a place and make people laugh. I want to make them think and feel as well. So using that, and I hope to carry this and, maybe do, like stand-up philosophy, be a mystical comedian, yeah.
So Justin L. Shaw is a mystical comedian, spiritual Sherpa, an author, and a sorcerer, which he spells with an OU, referring to what many people call source.
That we can't see, but they're there nonetheless. They're just on a different channel. It's the channel, watching a soccer game on channel 10, and you flip to channel 12, the soccer ball is not going to come flying into the football field on channel 12. So it's, they're separate, but they're there, and they kind of bleed together like a radio station bleeds. You're going from one city to the other, and you get that interference that's like one radio station's going in and the other one's coming out, and it's kind of both at the same time and kind of bleeding in together. And that's the world of the paranormal. So, Einstein said, the most wonderful thing a human can experience is the mysterious. And I'm all on board. I'm all on board with that quote.
And now for my conversation with Justin L. Shaw.
Hey, everyone.
I'm really excited to let you know about the Science and Spirituality Salons I'm now hosting. During these intimate events, a scientifically verified psychic medium will give all of you readings, and I will give a talk on the science and evidence that changed my mind about an afterlife. This will also be an amazing opportunity to get to meet some of you in person or virtually, and to share more about all the science and data that transformed my worldview and got me through my worst days. These can be hosted in your home, in a nearby cafe with a private room, or they can even be virtual. I've hosted a few already, and they were really special, fascinating, emotional, evidential. So if you're interested in getting a small group together over dinner, brunch, drinks, coffee, to learn more about the science and to get evidential medium readings, send me an email at hello@wtfjusthappened.net and put science and spirituality. Today I'm speaking with author Justin L. Shaw. Welcome, Justin.
Hi, great to be here.
It's great to have you.
Wherever. It's everywhere.
Everywhere, right? No, it's good to be speaking with you. I loved your kind of fun tone to dark subjects, which I think is exactly aligns with this podcast in many ways. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your book, your backstory, as much as you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, so it's always good to start a little bit with the background. I feel, when I was growing up, and I went to a lot of therapists when I was, in teenage years, and it was kind of, I'd sit there, all thunder-faced and be like, what do you know about, what I've been through or pain or anything like that? And, there's sympathy and there's empathy. And, there's, a lot of times people can have sympathy and listen to your pain, but empathy is someone that can feel it with you. And that's what I want. I like to get out there, people that I get it. I've been through the ringer, as they say. So yeah, it's, upbringing, just to briefly go over it, upbringing, was very, it was an emotional vacuum in my home. There's a lot of pop culture in my book. I like to say it was like Fight Club. There was 2 rules in my household. The first rule was you do not talk about your feelings. And the second rule was you do not talk about your feelings. So it was that kind of upbringing that was like, my mother, it was mostly just me and my mother. And, she did the absolute best she can. And, I look back now on how she was brought up, and it all makes sense to me how she was. She was not a yeller or an abuser in any way, but she was just shut down. She just didn't talk about things. She didn't She wasn't emotional in any way. She doesn't hug me. She didn't say I love you. These are things children need. So finding my trauma was difficult. There's these big T, capital T traumas that happen. A lot more of these happen in adulthood, that kind of brought me to my knees and brought me to this new path. But the capital T traumas, those knee jerk, big time, things that happen to us. But then there's this lower T trauma, and that's the kind of slow burn, kind of emotional neglect that I went through as a child. And she's passed on now. I love my mother, and my dad was around more when I was a child, but it was an awful marriage. They had been married a very long time. When I came along, they were already married for 20 years. My brothers and sisters were older. They had moved out. It was just her and I. So most of the time it was spent, just her in her room and me in my room. And that's how it was. That's just how things were. And, the only grandparent I ever knew growing up was her mother. And so because they were much older, and they were both 42 when I came along, and, so I didn't know my grandparents, but I knew my one grandmother, and she died when I was like 12. But, it just makes sense why my mother was the way she was. If you ever watch Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Mac's mom, she's just kind of this chain smoking, like alcohol drinking, like come give your granny a hug, like that kind of grandmother. That's who raised my mom. So it made sense why she was the way she was. So that kind of upbringing, brought me to a very turbulent kind of young adulthood in high school and college and after college. In my 20s was just a straight dumpster fire. Like there's just no getting around it. Like I spent nights in park benches and jails and rehabs and halfway houses, and just, man, it was not a lot of fun at that time. So it just was what it was, and I got through it. And finally I got to rehab. And, the first rehab, it really didn't make sense. I had a lot of emotional issues growing up, and all these things that doctors, they want to label everything. And, it's everyone's autistic these days. And, I don't believe that there's, you can label everything, but I think it all has one root cause, and that's spiritual bankruptcy. And mine was ADD, ADHD, obviously the addiction issues, depression, anxiety, all these labels that got put on me. And so I kind of got things more together. The first time through rehab was just like, just get these drugs out of my system and it'll be fine. Like that's, I'm struggling because I'm withdrawing, right? I had no idea about this other spiritual element to the
Right.
disease of addiction, right? Disease. It is a disease, addiction. It is dis-ease in the soul, and it causes a disease of the mind, of the body. And there's lots of diseases out there that is rootly caused in dis-ease of the soul. And so that's exactly, what was going on with me, but I didn't get that. So the first time through rehab was just like, it I got through it, and it was like, okay, I'm clean now. And I didn't kind of do anything spiritual. I didn't do, any sort of church or AA. I was like, that stuff is kind of weird. It's not for me. No, thank you. And so I just didn't do it. And that lasted about 3 months. And honestly, I'm surprised it even lasted that long. And right back out. And of course, you're not going to give any respect or healing to all the trauma and everything. All those emotions are going to come back, whether you're clean or not. So, went back a second time, and that's when things kind of started changing. The spiritual aspect came in, and so I started going. I just did whatever I could because now I was like, I'm wrong. Just getting clean and getting the body clean doesn't solve everything. So I kind of went the AA route and kind of Christianity, and started respecting spirit more. And that was fine for a while, but, it just made me realize, that kind of a lot of religions and things like that Christianity in particular, because that's what I went through for about 10 years. And for me, and I write about this, it's like this big mansion, right? This big fancy mansion. And, there's 19 rooms, and there's a basketball court and a game room and a movie theater. And it's really nice inside the mansion, right? Like there's a lot of good to, religion and Christianity, but there's also some destructiveness. And I found that, it was this fancy mansion, which you're not allowed to leave, right? You're not supposed to go investigating outside this mansion. So, that's other religions and, things like, you're not supposed to go. That's bad. That's taboo. You're not supposed to do any of that. Even if it helps, it's like they this fear and judgment that's built into the religion causes people to not want to leave the mansion, even if it's to their own benefit, which is what I started finding, was that this mansion is built on a cracked foundation of fear and judgment. And that started happening when my mother was pronounced terminally ill. And the trauma I went through with that was bad enough, but I had all this built-in programming in my mind that, all these pastors had put into my mind and soul, that she was going to hell. Because
that's
she didn't.
Terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so me going through that year, last year of her dying, and thinking that she's hellbound was just intensified the trauma 100 times. 100 times. It would have been bad no matter what. But thinking that she's like, because she never went to church and didn't do any of that, that she's doomed, right? So after she passed, that's when I started doing more investigating, and I started leaving the metaphorical mansion, right? I started, doing more meditation and yoga.
And can I ask, were you trying to investigate if she had survived in some way, where she was? What was the main investigation you were focused on?
Yeah, I knew there was an afterlife. I absolutely knew that at that time, and I had some experiences, and so I knew there was this other plane, and this isn't it. I was already at that point spiritually, but I thought that she was off to some horrible place in the afterlife, which I wouldn't think that. It's just our consciousness just kind of carries on, and I kind of see it as the simulation theory now, where, if we don't learn our lessons here, there's no hell and damnation forever. We get another try. If she got through that other side and she was kind of sat down. I think we have a review, which is why, people say we have all this stuff that goes through our my life flashed before my eyes and all this stuff. And I think there is a review. And, I think if we didn't, I think angels are, people that have mastered the simulation, so to speak. If you think of a simulation, a flight simulator, let's say, you go into a flight simulator, there's a clear purpose for that. You're in the simulator, you're learning how to fly a plane, so you can take those skills and move them on into, the quote real world and fly a plane. And, anything that happens in the simulation stays in the simulation. There's no, you crash the plane in the simulation. You're not hurt. You're not dead. You learn that and you move on. So this is a simulation of love, because love is the one thing that transcends space and time. It is the one thing that you leave here and take with you. So, I think that's, and if she didn't quite get her mission, which I'm not sure if she did or not. But I know, she'd get another chance. There is no this, hell forever. And that's all this, that's the fear and garbage that religions tend to feed us so that we don't leave. Right. Because if people are leaving religion, then then the pocketbook goes and the money goes. And if you're constantly losing people, you have to find a way to keep them in. And that's the fear. If you leave this religion, you're messing with your life and damnation. So there has to be a way to keep people in, and that's what they've done. So I had these experiences that just, I had what I call bliss attack after I started doing a lot of meditation and shadow work, which is something I mentioned in the book. And I did these things, and I had a 3-hour long bliss attack. It was like,
I'm going to have to ask you about that. But first, I want to ask you said you knew there was an afterlife beforehand based on some experiences. Can I ask you why you knew that and what those experiences were?
Yeah, it was just, there are a lot of experiences with kind of funny little ghost things. We had traveled when I was younger, and, just had some funny ghost experiences that were, like things,
Tell
being
us a
said or
specific one
being,
if you don't mind. Do
well,
you want
yeah,
to share a specific one of your?
there was a time, in this haunted hotel, actually here in Arizona, in Jerome,
Mhm,
there's this very, very haunted hotel that we
mhm,
stayed in one time just for
mhm.
fun. And we had, the door slam in the middle of the night, and then we had what sounded like chains being dragged up and down the corridor of the building. It used to be a mental
Weird.
hospital, and so it sounded like chains. And so I'd go run out and open the door, and there'd be nothing there. And so,
Mhm,
like, there's just these little things. I never saw a full apparition or ghost or anything. But
mhm,
and I have a tendency to believe other people's stories. As a kid, I was like, because I've had fun things happen to me. I watch a lot of paranormal shows and
mhm.
things where I just don't think that many people are lying. Like, there
Okay,
might be a
that's a
couple
good. Yeah.
people who out there who might, embellish some stuff and say some,
Mhm,
but there's just so many stories of ghosts and aliens
mhm.
and cryptid creatures and all these amazing stories that are out there. And if just one person is telling the absolute truth, and then we have to completely reevaluate everything that we've been taught. And so
That's
I
yeah.
truly believe that that not everybody is lying. There's just no way. And I think it's a vast majority of people who are telling the truth. Maybe not everybody, but I truly
Mhm.
believe the vast majority of people are telling the truth, which means we really have to think about what we've been taught over the years about reality as we see it. But
Yeah.
that's how I just knew at that time that there was something else. And then like I said, the Bliss attack and everything took me to a different place
Mhm.
completely.
Yeah. So, what happened in the Bliss attack? Was this tied into your mother's passing? Was it later? What happened with that?
Yeah, it was later. It was so this is about 4 years ago. And it was about 18 months after she'd gone. There was several things that happened before that, with my mother passing, and then I had a sister pass, I had a childhood friend pass.
Oh,
I
I'm
had I
sorry.
had I yeah, it was really a tough time. I was using drugs again because I didn't, and like I'd been attacked in
Yeah.
the face by this giant dog at a drug dealer's house and just ripped through
Oh
my
my
face and
God.
almost took my eye. Yeah, so
Mm.
it's not to say like woe's me. It's just, yeah, and I had an instance
What
with
happened?
my fiance. She took off with our infant son and never to be seen again. So haven't had any contact with her. She moved across the
Oof.
country,
This
and
is too
just,
much
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
that's it was yeah, and all these things were happening within just a few year period. And so it was about, and so, but this all kind of brought me to where I am now. It was just one of those instances where it's just like, what is going on? What am I doing? What is my purpose? Why is this all that's happening? Things really aren't going so well for me right now. Like tell me
Mhm.
where I need to go. And that's when, this kind of Bliss attack happened, where I just knew it was 3 hours of, and there was no drugs. There was no drugs involved at this time. I had been sober for weeks,
Mhm.
and it was just this moment of 3 hours of just this pure love, this pure love sensation, while at the same time I was getting like downloads from the universe
Mhm.
at the same time. So it was, and I knew them to be true because of how I was feeling, and I knew in that moment I had been on airplane mode my whole life. So it was like, a phone perpetually in airplane mode is not living up to its potential. So I think we're all in airplane mode to a degree. And I
Mhm.
think all children are out of airplane mode, but it gets put on somewhere around 8, 9, 10,
Mhm.
and just stays on. But we can take it off. And once it's off, it stays off. Like there's no going back. Even if you try
Mhm.
to go back, once you're off airplane mode, you can't turn it back on. You can try, which I did for a while with kind of the drugs and alcohol. And I tried to turn it back on, but the phone to my kind of destiny never stopped ringing, and it just became annoying. And about 2 years ago, I finally answered it. It was like,
Mhm.
okay, what's next? And that's
Mhm.
that's kind of what got me started here.
Yeah, and you talk about, I know you mentioned, first of all, you mentioned in your book a near life experience instead of the near death experience. Is that the Bliss attack or was that something
Yes.
else?
Yeah,
That was the
near
Bliss
life
attack. Okay.
experience. Yeah, yeah, that's
Got
what
it.
I like to call
Okay.
it, because I wasn't dying or dead. So I call it
Okay.
my near life experience, because it was that's what it was. Yeah, it was something
Were
like
you
that,
like
but
out
different.
of your body? Like, did you get information? I don't really. Did something like inexplicable happen, or was it just like a joyful?
Yeah, no, something different, inexplicable happened for sure. It was something joyful. I did not leave my body. It was
Okay.
I was on my bed having this experience the whole time. I was like, I had just done a workout and I was doing a post workout
Hmm.
stretch, and that's when this feeling overcame me. And I was just on my bed in my room for 3 hours as I was getting downloads of, kind
Hmm.
of, like getting visions of where I was supposed to go and what I was supposed to do, like writing this book and my, the next path for me. And also, truths about just,
Hmm.
the reality that we live in, quote unquote, and the kind of the illusionary nature to things and things, this is not really real. We're not actually here right now. We're all this one consciousness having different experiences. I'm you, you're me. We're just having different experiences. We're like one. It's like an
Hmm.
ocean. If you take an ocean and you take a glass of water and you stick it into the ocean, you take it out. Well, the entire ocean is still in that glass of water. And then when you kind of pour it back in, that's kind of death. You're just a glass of water being poured back into the ocean. But the entire
Hmm.
ocean is still in that glass. And that's where I realize kind of religion has skewed things, because if people knew how powerful they really were and that they are little
Yeah.
pieces of God, right? If you think of,
Hmm.
a slice of pizza is still pizza, right? Like,
Hmm.
if people knew that really truly, then they would take all the power back. And the whole thing with religion is there's a separation of like, for
Yeah.
Christianity, well, I'm not God. This pastor knows better than I do. He's got this piece of paper on the wall that says he knows the Bible, and so he's closer to God than me, and that's not true at all. That's
Hmm.
the furthest from the truth. So, last thing I checked, Jesus didn't sign that seminary school diploma, did he?
All right.
Then you really should you really be speaking for him? Because like he didn't sign that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, but that's it. We're all little, pieces of God, which is really, really cool. And once people, I really, that idea, and to get on board with that, and the power that comes with that is amazing.
And you use the word God. What do you mean by that? Like a non-physical consciousness of sorts, or
Yeah, so I use source. God's kind of
okay,
like it's all the same thing. It's all called
okay.
the same thing, but I use source because it is that source energy, and because the G word, kind of
Hmm.
tends to frighten people away, and so
Yeah.
it is all the same thing, but source energy. And that's why my book is called Sorcery 101, and I spell it differently than the typical sorcery of wizards and magic. And it's not about
Hmm.
cauldrons or rat tails, or there's you
Right.
can leave your hooded wands in your magic wands and hooded robes in the closet.
Hmm.
But it's spelled with the U because it's that source energy. It is the
Hmm.
energy we can tap into at any time. It surrounds us. It is a substance. I like to say,
Hmm.
explaining source energy to a human is like explaining water to a fish. So
Yeah.
if you think about that, like it's tough to explain water to a fish, and the fish isn't really is a fish conscious of the water they swim in? I don't think so. So that it's that
Hmm.
kind of, it is that source energy, and that's what I'm tapping into to get this healing and thriving, that I came up with the book and try to help other people that are struggling, because I think there's trauma, right? Trauma is something that is the Western kind of medicine approach has no idea what to do about trauma. I mean, they know physical trauma, right? An acute injury. So I like to say, if I fall off a ladder in a tree, and there's a bone protruding from my arm, this isn't a good time for meditation. Like it's, like acupuncture isn't going to be very effective in that moment.
Right.
So you need to go to a
Right.
doctor, and
Hmm.
we know everything there is to know about acute injuries in the body. But once the bone is set, it is the body that heals himself. What
Hmm.
heals the body, what made the body heals the body. So what sorcery is about is setting the emotional bone to get the body to heal itself. And
Mhm.
that's when the trauma gets healed. Trauma just sits in our frontal lobe, and it affects everything. It affects judgment and
Mhm.
impulse control, personality. Everything that
Mhm.
makes us human is in our frontal lobe, and that's trauma just clouds it. Things. The holistic medicine is being
Mhm.
open to everything. So
Mhm.
that's what I'm trying to get across. And for people, and especially things like like depression and anxiety, going the route of like pills the rest of your life, that didn't sound
Yeah.
good to me. That just didn't. I mean,
Mhm.
and I know there's
I
other
could
people out
I
there
could agree with that.
that aren't, because there's always side effects to these drugs. Like,
Mhm.
even if they help, they're
Right.
like, it just, there was these side effects I just didn't want to deal with, and I felt like there
Yeah.
was a different
Personal.
way.
Yeah. I'm not gonna comment on any medical opinions on the podcast, but yeah, I'm always like, go to your doctor, figure it out. Everything, we all have our right thing, but yeah. So I want to get back a little bit to like science and spirituality and afterlife. You talk about physics and the Big Bang Theory a bit in your book. How do you feel that ties into like non-physical consciousness, afterlife, spirituality? I'm obsessed with both of those as well, so I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's what I call kind of the launch, right? Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
it was, just this moment of just complete expansion. And science likes to
Mm-hmm.
make us think, I love science, but I think spirituality sits in the middle of religion and science. I think it's the
Mm-hmm.
best of both worlds, without leaving.
Interesting.
It kind of
Mm-hmm.
leaves the law and dogma of both religion and science, and you get spirituality, because you're not tied to any
Mm-hmm.
certain laws and
Mm-hmm.
kind of rules and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, thinking that this whole thing happened just accidentally is a bit like
Mm-hmm.
walking into your kitchen and seeing kind of an ornate chocolate cake sitting on the counter, and just and then assuming that
Mm-hmm.
all these ingredients came together and collided together and then
Mm-hmm.
superheated in a spontaneous
Mm-hmm.
combustive moment and created this. That wouldn't happen. You would come into your kitchen and assume someone made this
Mm-hmm.
chocolate cake for you and put it there. There was some
Yeah.
intelligence behind this chocolate cake. It didn't just happen.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the ridiculousness I feel that like is to this whole this what this is. There's an intelligence behind it, and you can see it everywhere. And
Yeah.
there's something to it. And like I said, this force field that's around us, I believe
Mm-hmm.
it molds us together. It binds the universe together, and it's inside us, and it's everything. And it just came together in this one beautiful moment and just created everything, which is everything that we see. It's really cool and interesting. It's something that I really dig as
Mm-hmm.
well, and I'm into. So for sure, that's kind of what I talk about.
Like, do you think the intelligence, it's like our consciousness coming together, or do you think it's like an individual higher consciousness? Like, do you have any opinions on what you think it is exactly?
Well, Erwin Schrödinger, who was a physicist, said
Yeah.
the number of minds in the universe is one. And so it is all one mind. We are all one mind. And there is all one mind that can be tapped into. It's the
Mhm.
Akashic field. It is everything. It is and it can be tapped into like a keg. And it's it's very hard to
Mhm.
explain. Like my hand is made of atoms, and this table
Mhm.
that this is sitting on is made of atoms. Why can't my
Mhm.
hand go through this table? No one can really
Mhm.
explain that. And in my opinion is that it's just belief. It is the belief that all this is here is that what's stopping my hand from going through this table. So I think there was a point, they're great masters in Jesus and Buddha, and there's been so many that have kind of mastered their belief, and that they're able to walk on water and kind of put
Mhm.
as the stories go, put their hands through tables and walls and all these magical things. Because if you're able to truly believe that that wall or that thing is
Mhm.
not there, then you can pass through it. Because I mean, really, it is. It's down to atoms. That wall is atoms. I'm made of atoms. Everything is made of one thing. So we're
Mhm.
all that one thing. So it just makes sense to me that these things I can't do it. You would spend like hours and hours in meditation and trying to come up with ways to do that. But I believe in possibility. I believe in possibility.
Mhm.
So I think there's a lot more to this that that stumps scientists, and that's where kind of science
Mhm.
gets kind of a worm's eye view on the world a little bit. It's just kind of like, well, we don't know, we can't prove it, so it's not real. And so that's, I don't know, that's boring to me. And religion is too far the other way. It's just, that's where spirituality comes in. It's right in the middle of the two.
Mhm.
And so that's, yeah, that's what I think this whole thing is yeah, just a giant simulated video game. I mean, if you think of if a simulation of video game, it's all lines of code. Like if a
Mhm.
character is in front of a wall, that's lines of code. The character's made of lines of code, and that wall is there, and it's because it's been programmed to be there. So
Mhm.
it's a lot like that. I love that so we're getting advanced in these simulations that this is really starting to make sense. Philip K. Dick was a
Mhm.
very famous
Yeah.
science fiction author, and he brought this to kind of the attention back in the 70s when the computers weren't even like a thing, and he was already saying that this is like a computer simulated reality and people couldn't get around. But now that we've seeing it, when you're in a simulation, everything is very real. Like if you're sitting next to someone that has those VR goggles on, they're reacting to
Mhm.
things that aren't actually there. It's kind of funny, like you're
Mhm.
laughing because they're reacting. You don't know what they're reacting to. It's not there. And
Mhm.
I believe that is our kind of higher self in this higher dimension. That's we are not our thoughts. We are the awareness of our thoughts, and that is that kind of higher self just having fun. It's like what you think is real is not. It's not really there.
So do you think our bodies are kind of like VR sets? I've heard that kind of descriptions. Is that what you think kind of?
Yeah, yeah. I think
That's so
I think
cool.
that's yeah. That's what
Mhm.
we've. And so it helps me a ton. And like there's a lot of kind of the nihilist perspective. This is like it's all simulation. Who cares? Like what? Well, this is a very important. This place is very
Mhm.
important. We are in a practice ground
Mhm.
for love, and we need to get it right. Otherwise, we could end up at, I don't know. I personally don't want to come back here again. It's nice. It's been
You
fun. I
don't?
mean, and
Okay.
but I'd really like to stay on that other side. And
Mm.
I need to figure out what how to get this love thing really figured out, because that's what we're here to do. And there's a lot of fun aspects of being here. There's plenty, especially the
Mhm.
senses. We're not going to have the senses. I think we're all 100% consciousness. So anything with the
Mhm.
five senses is kind of a fun thing of being here. We're going to lose our sight, our smell, our our touch, and all that.
Mhm.
That's fun. That's kind of the fun aspect, because if you enter a simulation, like you put the VR goggles on, there's gonna be fun aspects to it. So it's not just about work, and but that's yeah, that's it
Mhm.
just, as I've thought about it more and as these things have kind of come to me, it's like, yep, that's it. That's what this is. That's
Mhm.
what we're here to do, and that makes all the sense in the world. It's just there's don't have a nihilist kind of aspect of what woes me. Like what's the point of it all if this isn't real? It's like, this is very important, and we have assignments, and we're here to
Mhm.
learn and help each other. That's what we're here to do.
Mhm. And wait, do you love and read Michio Kaku?
Oh yes, yeah, yeah.
You seem
I have
like,
read
yeah,
some of the
you seem
stuff.
like
Yeah,
you would love, yeah, simulation theory. A lot of your
yeah.
theories sound. Is there who do you have a favorite physicist or scientist whose work or theory that you love the most? Either scientist or a theory that you think is kind of your favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I've read a lot of the people that have helped most in my upbringing. David Bohm is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
I quote him in the very
Totally.
beginning of my book, and all those kind of
Yeah.
physicists that are kind of on the quantum the quantum
Hmm.
physicists. I love looking at their stuff. Scientists like Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton.
Hmm.
They've done a lot with kind of this whole looking at science in a different way. They're considered pseudoscientists or whatever, but they're just different. They're just outside the box thinking people who want to try it from a different approach and perspective. And especially now that we have this equipment, and slowly we're kind of seeing things that it's like radioactivity. Like just because there was a Geiger counter was invented in the 1920s, but just because there was no Geiger counter before that doesn't mean radioactivity wasn't there. And so like as we're getting more and more equipment and these fun things that are kind of proving the brain mapping and all the stuff, and so I get really into that into that stuff. And so there's all kinds of physicists that I'm into, that I've read books of, but it's fascinating.
It's so fascinating. Yeah. What why do you choose David Bohm as like, yeah, your opening? Like what is it you love most about him, or what inspired you? Which theory, is there something specific you love that he's done or thought?
Well, all those guys in the that really started
Mm-hmm.
the whole quantum
Mm-hmm.
realm, down to the Max Planck and like I said,
Mm-hmm.
Schrödinger. Einstein wasn't completely on board with everything,
Mm-hmm.
but David Bohm was someone that really, I think, understood the field, and that's
Mm-hmm.
the biggest part is understanding this field, and he really included it, and he understood it, and he knew it was there, and he knew it was
Mm-hmm.
real, and the unified field, the Akashic field, this field of energy that exists, the source energy.
Mm-hmm.
He included that in a lot of his work, and even back then and before all of our gadgets now. And I think
Mm-hmm.
these physicists would just have such a field day with all the stuff that's coming up, and the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva,
Mm-hmm.
and
I'm
these
obsessed with it.
amazing things, finding the God particle, these huge breakthroughs in physics, in quantum physics, that are just fascinating. And so I just love all those guys from the very beginning, that kind of 1920s, as the infancy was coming together and
Mm-hmm.
looking at things behave differently at the quantum scale, and that's when they really started realizing that that the very small, they kind of have, and they've made two laws. Right now there's the laws of the small and the laws of the big, and the classical physics and quantum physics, and they're separate, but really they're not. It's just the quantum takes longer to come into the classical. So it's the double slit theory, which is the waves, the way energy can be a particle or a wave. It just depends on how you look at it. When you look at it, it behaves differently than when you don't look at it. So when you're not looking at these electrons, that they show up as waves. When you look at them and observe them, they show up as particles. So I believe, we can take waves of possibility, right, that are out in the field, and turn them into particles of reality based on observation. And we don't
Mm-hmm.
observe the world with our eyes; we observe it with our mind.
If you want to learn how I went from being a skeptical atheist who thought there was zero chance of an afterlife to a skeptical atheist who thinks an afterlife is highly probable, come check out my books. WTF just happened.
So we come in and we create things. We create our future. I'm doing it right now with, like, I created the book, and things are in the infancy for me. The book is very recent, but I'm hoping this leads some really fun places. And I'm really taking this to the test, like this whole quantum theory and the particles and the waves, and I'm really putting it to its maximum test. Like, if this is true, like, it just we live in a world where time is real. Time isn't actually real, but here it is observed and it is real. So I don't believe that science should be classified in two different sciences. I think it's one science. I just think that in the world of the classical, the quantum, it just takes longer. It's just not instant. In the world of the quantum, everything is instant. It just takes longer to become what it is. And so that's the exciting part.
Right.
I love that test is what really turned things for me too. The observation. So that was Schrödinger. The cat alive or dead in the box, right? He puts the poison in there, and he's what Schrödinger says is that if you put the vial of poison, the cat is either dead or alive. But
Right.
if
Also,
it's
just to clarify, theoretically, he didn't actually poison a cat. So
no,
I know
it's
it was a
theoretical.
thought
It's
experiment.
theoretical.
Yeah. Just
It's
if
better. I
anyone's
like
not
it
as
better if the
familiar
cat
with
is
it.
asleep or not. I like it better that way. Let's not kill any cats, right? Like, that's not cool.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, no, but that's the fascinating thing, right?
Mhm.
Is the cat alive or dead? And he was saying it's neither. It's both and, like,
Mhm.
it's both alive and dead. And then once you open the box, it becomes one or the other.
Mhm.
And so these kind of theories and tests were just what really
Mhm.
drove me into the just loving science again. I was never big into science, as I had my trauma I was dealing with in high school, so I'd never
Yeah.
got good grades in science. I never really got good grades
Yeah.
in anything. But now, as an
Mhm.
adult, I've had just found this new love for quantum physics. It's just so much fun. I'm not
I
good at the
feel the
math
same.
still.
Yeah.
The math portions of
Okay.
it, like Schrodinger's
Mhm.
equation, like, and I
Mhm.
try to understand them, but my
Mhm.
mind is just not there. But the theories and like the ideas behind, I get that, and I'm all on
Mhm.
board. But you start throwing equations and math at me, I'm
Okay.
out. I'm out.
I I relate though what you said too about not like it in school, and now I love it. I'm fascinated. I found as an adult it was actually the split particle experiment was one of the first things after losing my dad that got me to think there could be something more. It was in that like very early group, and so I relate to that. Yeah. And I think the way things are taught in school and the structure and pressure, I mean, I think it makes everything so, at least my school experience, everything was so exhausting. High pressure
Mhm.
sort of dulled out. Nothing in the like structure of classes was ever interesting, But I
Yeah.
think the material itself, when kind of you start going into the real world, it becomes very interesting. I actually want to ask you then, since we're both so into quantum, I always think the way quantum entanglement, the way two particles can communicate faster than the speed of light, time doesn't seem to matter, distance doesn't seem to matter, and psi, phenomena, especially when, not especially, but when studied in a lab as well as, out in the wild, all seem to a consistency as time doesn't matter and distance doesn't matter. So I think, and I would love your thoughts on this too, the mechanism that we don't know that exists in physics and quantum entanglement between two particles. And I'm just going to very quickly explain it if any of our listeners don't know what the quantum entanglement is. It's, for example, like they'll have two particles um, and they're separated like very far away. I mean, one could even be on one side of like the solar system, one on the other, for example. And they're entangled where one is spinning left. I mean, one's spinning like clockwise, the other spinning counterclockwise. And these are all like the best descriptions for this because there isn't really like definitions in like non physics, our world that apply, but this is the best way they can describe this experiment. And so they're entangled where it'd be like, let's say they were next to each other. You change the spin of one from clockwise to counterclockwise, the other then mimics that and will change its spin so they stay coordinated that way. And then as I mentioned, like let's say you take one of those entangled particles and put on one side of the solar system, one on the other, there's no mechanism where they should be able to communicate quickly. That it's exactly the same. You change the spin of one, the other changes. Somehow they remain entangled, communicating faster than the speed of light, communicating by some mechanism no one understands. And I think whatever mechanism that is going to be the answer to psi abilities and to somehow what happens with our consciousness when it's non-physical and in an afterlife and can communicate with like mediums. And do you agree with that theory since you're
Yeah.
so
Oh, yeah.
into
Yeah.
yeah
No, the
okay
entanglement thing. And I asked, so I got a great download that because I asked that question. I was like, how does,
Mhm.
it's one thing that Einstein like couldn't get on board with quantum physics. He just like the whole, moving faster than the speed of light and two separate things connected in space. And
Mhm.
he was just like, I don't get it.
Right.
But that was one of the things that I kind of asked. I was just asked one day, I was like, how does the entanglement work? And from what I
Mhm.
was told, from this kind of feeling and senses, I don't get audible voices. I'm not schizophrenic. But like, just these, what I was through thought, it was, so if you think about a pool and electricity, so electricity is another force that we can use. You don't, if you're in a pool and lightning strikes at the other end of the pool, you're still going to get electrocuted because water's a conductor, right? Like, so,
Mhm.
so it's very similar to that. But if you're on a beach, let's say in Miami Beach, and lightning strikes off Cuba, you're not going to feel that because
Mhm.
electricity is classical physics. It's limited by classical physics. You can only travel so fast and so far. But because consciousness is like that water, and because the conduit and the stimulant are made up of the same material, that's how it's lightning fast and can get there. So it would be like if lightning hit a sea of electricity. So the information on that bolt of lightning would be transferred instantaneously and as fast as the speed, because the conduit and the stimulant are the same thing. So a thought can get transferred. That it's how, like, you'd think of someone that everyone's done that, where it's like, oh, I was just thinking of you and you called. Like, that's weird. well, that thought is instantaneous and calls out there, and it gets transferred that fast. The speed of thought will always be faster than the speed of light, because it's not, it's not limited by the classical physics. So
Mhm.
from what I was kind of given was that that's what this is. It's like we're, it's kind of like the pool thing, but because the thought is the same material as the consciousness that surrounds us. So that's why it goes faster than the speed of light. So that's kind of
Mhm.
what I was, which was kind of an exciting, was like, oh, that makes sense. Like I can
Mhm.
kind of explain that to people because I'm not a super smart person. So like I can, I don't have to use all this stuff to kind of, I'm very, very simple. And I think that's what made Jesus such a good, kind of spiritual teacher, is like, he just had these parables that people understood. So that's what I like to do, is try to explain this whole spirituality. And it's all, science and religion. It's all kind of tied in together. And that's the exciting part. And that's where I like to use, humor and pop culture, and technology is a big one. I use a lot of technology, like the phones. I can use the phone as a really good example of how kind of, source works in us and things like that. So, but, explaining physics, that's another thing. So people just need parables. They need a way to understand, give me something from my everyday life to understand this. And that's what I learned. I gotta get good at parables.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's all we have too, because we can't really perceive another dimension, So
Yeah. No.
we can kind of get the concept. I don't know if you ever saw that video of Carl Sagan showing a reflection of a tesseract of the fifth dimension and trying to show, the way we just can't understand it. And then he showed a reflection. Imagine a two-dimensional world and what it would be like to try to teach a two-dimensional conscious person, or whatever. It wouldn't be a person, but whatever. What a 3D cube is. And he showed a reflection where, if you put a light through it, you see the lines. Like, I guess it was, like, we probably all did this when we were in school. We would just, like, in board, we would draw little 3D cubes, you know what I mean, on our 2D paper, like square lines meeting at the corners. I used to just doodle those in class when I was bored as a kid. But it's like so it's like the experience. If you don't have the concept, your brain's like, oh, I understand that visually as a cube, or like picture a 3D cube painted on a painting. If you were two-dimensional and walking along, it would be like shadow where the line is, to clear, to shadow, to light,
Mm-hmm.
to shadow, to light, given that you've drawn like the sides of it all dark. And it's like, that's kind of, if we look at a video of a tesseract from the fifth dimension, it's like we're seeing in the third dimension, or I guess 4D tesseract, depending if you're counting time as the fourth dimension. It's very interesting when you think about, like, it's just such a strong example of how we can't perceive other dimensions. So I don't know. I think you'll personally love that video.
Yeah, no, I'll have to
Um,
check it out for sure.
yeah. So I want to ask you, first of all, like, I'm so sorry for the loss of your mother, and you said you lost a dear friend as well as I absolutely apologize for not remembering your other loss, but I know you mentioned a couple of fairly recent losses.
Mm-hmm.
Have you gotten signs? Have you spoken to a medium? Any type of communication that you've had with any of them? And
No,
if
actually,
so,
I
what?
I mean, yeah, I haven't really had. I feel, my mom around. My sister was another one.
Your
And
sister. I'm
and
so
and
sorry.
and my son too, who's still alive. But
Okay.
is she just decided, she's got her own issues and her own spiritual things, and I know
Okay.
what happened to her as a kid, and I have empathy for her, certainly. And that's that whole thing of trauma, is just not making good decisions in that kind of frontal lobe, and she's not making a good decision right
Yes.
now, by excluding me out of his. But I get he
I'm
he came
sorry.
to me just the other night, and was telling me, he's okay, and he's doing okay, and things are okay. He's 3 now, and we'll see where this whole thing leads. But yeah, it's
Mhm.
it's 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 tough. But seeing him in my dream, and that was really good. I get kind
Mhm.
of feelings of my mom around. And loss is just something we all have to deal with. The longer you're
Yeah.
alive, the more loss we're going to have. And
Mhm.
that's just kind of a part of the deal. But it doesn't have to define us. That's the
Mhm.
thing. It doesn't. We're all going to grieve, and it's going to be difficult. But if you have
Mhm.
kind of a different perspective on it, the world is, all perspective. And
Mhm.
that's how I kind of get through these tough things, and the grief. As long as it's As long as we're not running from the grief, it cannot control us. So that's when it starts to take control, is when we're ducking from it and running from it. And I did that for a little bit, and it doesn't work out well. What you resist will always persist. So you have, in order to heal it, you have to feel it. So you have to get through the pain. And, a lot of these things that I always say, it's a minimum, for major loss, it's going to be a year, I feel like you have to get through every day in a year's period to really feel that. And for me, that meant, getting, no drugs, no alcohol, no ducking. We all have our pain duckers, right? We all have our pain duckers. And whatever yours or mine is, or anybody's, there's plenty out there. For some people it's gambling, it could be shopping, it could be sex. And none of those things are bad in themselves. It's the attachment to them that causes the suffering. So for me, I always tell people, give it a year. You need to get through that year of no pain ducker. You can go back to your pain duckers, and you don't have to just give up things forever. But in order to heal, you need a year, and we cannot heal while we're numb. So that was a big thing for me, is to get through a full year, and it's been a couple now, and to get through that full time of the full period, for my son or my mom, it's the birthdays and the holidays, and getting through that without my pain duckers and feeling it and getting on the other side. We never completely heal from these things. There's always a scar, but a scar is a whole lot better than a gaping wound. Once we, there's the emotional alchemy is something I talk about, and it's, taking your trauma, and once you're able to, it can be trauma alchemized into wisdom. And once you kind of take that emotional charge out of the trauma, and once that dissipates and is gone, now your trauma is alchemized into wisdom, and it can be a very good thing. And it's always going to be a scar. It's always going to be there, but it's better than leaving that gaping wound that I talked about. Just, if you break your arm and you leave it undone, like there's no surgery or anything, anyone that touches that arm, there's going to be a reaction. There's going to be, don't touch that. Don't touch that. And that's the same thing for emotional trauma, that we have to get through that so that we can touch that and without it hurting. But the scar will be there, and that's what I've been getting through. Yeah.
And how does humor play in for that with you? Because you address very dark things in your book in a very humorous, sort of vibrant tone. How is that? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I believe that humor is something that is left out in kind of the trauma healing. I think, things need to be taken serious in one end, but it's not all serious. And I have a background in stand-up comedy, and that's where, I really find I was able to make people laugh. And I grew up, in kind of the childhood of the 90s, and that, the whole, the SNL and Adam Sandler and Chris Farley, that Jim Carrey was at the top of his game, and the Simpsons were amazing. And so I grew up this very Conan O'Brien, and just this amazing time of comedy. And I just realized that's what brought me out of my pain was comedy. Wow. And so, bringing a humorous charge to it, I believe we cannot heal when we are in a state of fear, because, whatever, state we're in, we're always going to be open to more of that state that we're in. Mm-hmm. So, that's why, depressing people don't really want to hear about joy and things like that, because they want to hear more about what's matching their tone and what they're feeling. So in order for healing to happen, I think, you need to bring people in the right vibration. The healing, I don't ever heal anyone. I show the vibration of healing and ask for them to match that vibration. And that's when it kind of happens. So that's the humor is the most fun part of everything, and having that as a skill set. I no longer, want to just go into a place and make people laugh. I want to make them think and feel as well. So using that, and I hope to carry this and, maybe do, stand-up philosophy, be a mystical comedian, yeah.
Oh my God, I'll be front row. I'm there.
Yeah. Mix in the comedy with the philosophy. I don't see that out there. I see a lot of amazing spiritual teachers, and I see some funny comedians. I don't see a good melding of the two. So that's where I want to come in and get people open to these ideas while making them laugh at the same time. Because no one in a comedy club at 10 p.m., with drinks in their hand is going to be open to, like a meditation before we start. Like it's not going to happen.
No,
So,
no.
it's something very, and I don't want to go on at 10 p.m. at night, and I don't want my audience to be drunk. So, like, what I want to do is very, very different. So, it's exciting, but it's humor's a big part of everything, because it puts you in that mood.
I agree. I feel like I definitely have a very dark sense of humor, and it's what gets me through everything,
Mhm.
So always has, even before losing my dad. Yeah, so you mentioned the energy of healing. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's just it's a vibrational where I believe the world is kind of made of light and sound, and
It is.
the joy is a vibration, healing is a vibration, and anger and shame and guilt are all vibrations. They're lower
Mhm.
vibrations. So
Yeah.
it's just it's that vibration. I want to get people
Mhm.
in a higher vibration of healing. So that's what it's about.
Interesting. Is that like a meditation, humor? What is the higher vibration of healing?
Yeah, there's meditations I do, and then of course the humor, like that's obviously
Mhm.
going to get in higher
Mhm.
vibrations too. But
Yeah.
there's certain meditations that you can kind of
Mhm.
get the mind and heart in line.
Mhm.
That's the world would be at a better place if we
Mhm.
can get all of our minds and hearts in line. So that's mind
Mhm.
heart coherence. That's sending the healing
Mhm.
vibration. You're feeling the feeling of being that healed person. You're connected to it. We talked about the different dimensions and things. There is a
Mhm.
dimension of someone, if they're struggling. There is a healed you in a dimension, and you want to pull that person, because that is a healed you. Everything is spidering off into different
Mhm.
possibilities and all these different things. So the healed person is the one you want to be, and you're pulling that healed person from that other dimension into this one, and that feeling is what draws it in. The thought will send it out. It's the electric signal. The thought, I want to be healed.
Mhm.
The feeling is the magnetic charge that pulls the
Mhm.
healing in. And so that's where the vibration comes in, is that mind heart coherence. The thought sends it out, the feeling draws it in.
Now, you mentioned being a paranormal investigator. What do you mean by that? Because I don't think you mean you go on like, what the, I know some people don't like that word, but like ghost hunts, for lack of a better word. What do you mean when you use the word paranormal investigator in a bio?
I do go and I ghost hunts.
You go
There's
on ghost hunts. Oh my God, I tried to find
yeah.
something about that. So wait, I'm gonna have so many questions about that. First, tell me how you got involved in that. When was what first of all got you involved in that?
Well, I mean, just kind of my experiences as a child, but I certainly and just investigating in,
Mhm.
like, what are these things, like the cryptid creatures that are supposedly from other dimensions that seem to be able, Bigfoot being one
Mhm.
of them, that seem to be able to interact with our dimension and then kind of disappear and go back into another one. You hear stories about that all the time. So I go out.
Mhm.
If you've heard of Skinwalker Ranch, I'm actually in Sedona
I
right
have.
now investigating. So we have
Oh
our
my God.
own
Okay.
Skinwalker Ranch. It's called Bradshaw Ranch, and I was there yesterday. And I was interacting with. I had an SLS camera which maps figures. It's kind of hard to
Mhm.
explain, but it maps human figures, and it also
Mhm.
maps figures that are there but aren't there. So I was interacting
Mhm.
with a ghost yesterday with a laser pointer, and so it was sitting on this chair in this. In It's supposed to be a portal. This whole ranch
Mhm.
area. It's supposed to be a portal where beings and things come in and out. And so it was interacting with me. It was this figurine that was mapped out, and it was interacting with this laser, and it was moving its foot as as I'm like doing it, but you can't see anything. It's not there. It's only on these little, like I said, all these tools and gadgets that are coming out, these days, that we can actually see. Oh, there's things that are there that we can't see, but they're there nonetheless. They're just on a different channel.
Mhm.
It's the channel, watching a soccer game on channel 10, and you flip to channel 12, the soccer ball is not going to come flying into the football field on channel 12. So it's, they're separate, but they're there, and they kind of bleed together like a radio station bleeds. You're going from one city to the other, and you get that interference that's like one radio station's going in and the other one's coming out, and it's kind of both at the same time and kind of bleeding in together. And that's the world of the paranormal. So yeah, I like getting, EVPs, voices that,
Mm-hmm.
but they can interact with us in different ways. It's just, and the more gadgets you have, the better off you are. I don't have that many gadgets yet, but the more gadgets you have, the easier it is to prove something. But I love ghosts, aliens, that they're big. Um, they're kind of being, proven that they're around too. And cryptids, these people that have these encounters of these strange creatures. And again, I just don't think they're all lying. These
Mm-hmm.
strange creatures of, Bigfoot's kind of the most well-known one, but I mean, people have, werewolf encounters and like mantis, giant mantis or giant, kind of insect looking creatures, and all these just fascinating things that it's just, so yeah, I investigate that stuff, and I've never seen anything that crazy before. Just some
Mm-hmm.
fun ghost encounters, lights in the sky. I've seen, some, but nothing that's like, oh my god, that's an alien spacecraft. That's what I'm after, is like having one of those whoa moments. That's like, there's an alien spacecraft hovering 50 feet over my head.
Yeah.
That's the goal. I've only seen kind of some fun lights in the sky, but that's the ultimate right there.
Oh my God, I think we all want that. I would love to see that at some point. Um, do you, what would you say is the biggest, like, well, I always say, what the fuck, that you've experienced doing these investigations?
I got, I got, I have some fun pictures that at this ranch, because I'll
Hmm.
go there, probably once a year or something, and
Hmm.
I'm there now, and I had some this amazing footprints that I found out there. These two-toed, huge footprints that
Hmm.
we're a size 14, and they're bigger than my foot, and it wasn't like this
Hmm.
classic Bigfoot five-toed thing. It was this two-toed,
Hmm.
strange looking, huge print. And so that's kind of the biggest what the fuck thing. That's like, what could have caused that is a real
Hmm.
footprint. What in the world could have caused that? And I also had a lot of fun with playing with the laser pointer yesterday, and having the entity, kind of
Hmm.
reenact with me, and all the
Hmm.
things from kind of a kid, and all.
Hmm.
It's just so much fun, and that's why I love investigating. It's just a hobby. I don't, certainly don't
Hmm.
get paid to do it, but I know a lot about that stuff, because I'm fascinated by, Einstein said, the most wonderful thing a human can experience is the mysterious, and I'm
Hmm.
all on board. I'm all on board with that quote.
I I am too, and I mean, everything's so mysterious. We keep learning more. And have you gotten any EVP messages?
I've gotten some fun, yeah, voices. Nothing crazy or shocking. I wish I could go on more. The more you do, the more you get. Of course, I don't
Hmm.
go as many as I'd like to do. Just I've gotten some one word responses and stuff. I've heard other people get some really impressive, sentences and things from people. And of course, the Ouija board, they can use that. You gotta be careful with that, of course, but but if you call in and do it properly, you can use a Ouija board without having crazy, dark entities happen or anything. But that's another way they message, is through the Ouija board. And so those are all kind of tools that I like to use and come up with, and you never know what you're going to find. Sometimes it's nothing, sometimes it's something really cool. But yeah, the EVPs, and I've just gotten answers to things, like one word answers to things. But I've heard EVPs that are really impressive, that are like sentences, or there's whispering in the background, and things we can't hear audibly. We never hear them at the time, ever. We have to catch them on the recorder, and that's when they need energy, and they need a lot of energy to do things like, you see in the haunting or conjuring movies, or something thrown across the room, or like something really crazy like that. They need a lot of energy to do that. But yeah, I haven't caught anything like super impressive in terms of EVPs just yet, but yet.
Even one word, it shows that a non-physical consciousness could be interacting. It's
Oh yeah,
evidence,
for sure. Oh yeah, yeah, for
I
sure.
almost don't care what
Yep.
they say, as long as it seems to be coming from something, some
Someplace
hint
else.
that there's something else. Yes,
No.
yes. Um, and you also, I want to back up a little. quite a bit, actually. You had mentioned you had believed in the Christian definition of God and heaven and hell for a long time, and then you changed your mind. What was the pivot? What made you change your mind?
Definitely the mother death, because it was like my mother had her issues, but she was a good person and she's kindness, and like she was kind of ignorant in a lot of things. But one thing I learned from her by, you know, not by her necessarily teaching, but by witnessing, watching. That's how kids learn, right? Was her kindness, and I just know there's absolutely no way that she's in some kind of fiery pit forever. That's bullshit. And so it's complete and utter bullshit. And that's when I started staunchly being like, this is crap. This is why
Mm-hmm.
is this way? Why would they be teaching these things? And then it started making more sense
Mm-hmm.
why they would have this underlying fear and judgment. And like any of those emotions, those are not good emotions to have. So this whole Christian aspect of gay, like the energy of love is not going to care who and how you love. Like that's insane.
Right.
Like think about that. The energy, God is love. It says it in every Christian church. So that means love is God, and love doesn't have an opinion on who or how you love. I mean, that's just it's just crazy to me. So these things started not making sense, and they started making
Okay.
more sense that someone kind of put this in and planted this as a form of control, and to control people and keep them down, while the other people that knew the truths, I think a truth is a truth until it becomes organized, and then the truth, the organization becomes more important than the truth itself. And that's what's happened with Christianity and Catholicism. A lot of religion is they just, people are here and God is here, and the truth is, it's one and the same. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's, my mother just being like, that was the turning point. That was when I left the mansion. Never, they don't want you to leave the Christianity mansion either, because they know you won't come back in. And that's certainly the way it was for me, because it just was like, no, it's much better out here. Yoga, meditation,
Mm-hmm.
and learning about other different religions. It's like it's like food. It's like if we don't try different. It's like saying I'm never going to try anything. No Mexican food or Chinese food, because burgers and fries. Nothing can be better than burgers and
Mm-hmm.
fries. And maybe another ethnicity's food might not even may even taste better, but maybe healthier too. There's a reason there's less fat people in Japan, right? Like, so there's it's investigating,
Mm-hmm.
because they're all pointed in the right direction. The problem
Mm-hmm.
comes in when they get on all these rules and dogma and follow our rules or else. That's where the
Mm-hmm.
problem comes in. It's all pointed in the right direction. There's all this wonderfulness, but the problem comes in is when the rules and the dogma, it's not true. You don't have to wear certain garments to please God. You don't have to do certain things. You don't have to premarital sex. All these rules, and none of them are true, because the energy that is God's source energy is love, and love cannot be anything else, because it would contradict itself. So
Mm-hmm.
people are scared because God is gonna. It's bullshit. It's all bullshit. So that's
Yeah.
where it really started coming in, though.
Then you start investigating, and yeah.
Investigating. Yeah, yeah.
Was there a turning point in the investigation where you were like, wow, I'm convinced? Like, did something happen that was evidential or powerful that
I
kind
mean,
of really,
I never had any experience in Christianity of that kind of bliss attack. That never
but it was the
happened.
Bliss attack?
Nothing,
Okay.
nothing like that
Okay.
ever happened. And it was when I started questioning things and questioning, shadow work
Mm-hmm.
is, questioning these limiting beliefs and these
Mm-hmm.
things that I held true at one time.
Mm-hmm.
There's 13 rungs in the system, because I AA in the 12 steps. Moving forward is good, but moving up is better, because a bird
Mm-hmm.
has a better perspective on things than a worm.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's 13, because we believe that 13 is this unlucky number, and to the point where hotels don't have 13 floors.
Yeah, it's kind of
It's
crazy.
become
Yeah.
ridiculous. Which they do have 13
Yeah.
floors. They just call it the 14th, but it's not
Right.
true. That 13 is actually a divine number and is known to be very lucky.
Okay.
And tarot is death, rebirth, and transformation, which is what sorcery is all about.
Okay.
So immediately the 13 in the 13 rungs gets people questioning maybe some
Mm-hmm.
things that I held true. Maybe they're not so
Mm-hmm.
true, because that's the first step to have your first bliss attack, is to
Mm-hmm.
start questioning your reality. And in my case, that what they said I went through is someone would refer to as a religious experience. Well, what stood in the way of this religious experience was religion for me.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of was very paradoxical in a sense. So that's really what kind of got me got me open to these new things.
Great. And we're going a bit over an hour. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd like me to ask you? Anything else you want to add?
No, just I guess where to find me. I mean, you can go. I was off
I'm
social
gonna
media
ask.
for
Yeah.
yeah. But aside from that, the social media. So I was off it for like 4 years, and happily, it was like a horse wearing blinders. I ran a better race, but I'm back on it now because it can be both good and bad. Instagram, I'm sorcerer with a U _13. I do this spiritual Sherpa thing, which is helping people one-on-one kind of with their spiritual path. Call it spiritual Sherpa because the Sherpa is not going to carry you to the top of Everest, but it's your journey. But I have a map. So if I have a really good solid map. Get in touch with, if you don't have Instagram, sorcerer13@gmail, which is my email. And then awaken the sorcerer, all with a U, .com is the website, and the audio should be out very, very soon, which is very exciting. If I'm not a big reader, the audio is a lot of fun because I get to do voices and tell my own jokes. So the audio is a lot of fun to get. That'll be on Audible probably 1 to 2 months. I think it's on the website, the Balboa website, Awaken the Sorcerer now. So, but it's cool. Check it out.
And I'll have all of that in the show notes. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem at all. This was fun.
It was so fun.
Yeah. And I like to, and just to leave someone with a little tidbit that I like to leave everyone with. It's, they always say live life like it's your first day or last day. And to me, that's terrible advice. I like to say live life like it's your first day. That kind of, my last day consists of not doing yoga and meditation, not working out. I might end up at a bar and then probably will end up robbing a pharmacy or something because it's my last day. Who cares, right? Like it's my last day. So my first day, I'm going to do I'm building something for the future. I'm going to do my yoga meditation. I'm going to learn some stuff. I'm building something for the future. And I've got this kind of childlike first day awe. So if you look at the world like it's your first day, it's going to help a lot in your spiritual progress. Always be learning, always be growing.
If you want to learn how I went from being a skeptical atheist who thought there was zero chance of an afterlife to a skeptical atheist who thinks an afterlife is highly probable, come check out my books. WTF Just Happened. To get more information on what the fuck just happened, go to WTFJustHappened.net. There you can order my book, WTF Just Happened, a sciencey skeptic explores grief, healing, and evidence of an afterlife. You can learn all about how I came to conclude that there most likely is an afterlife, but you can also learn about the early stages of my grief and the amazing, fascinating people I met along the way. You can read about how much I harassed the mediums and scientists trying to get evidence to see if the mediums were cheating and see if what everyone was saying actually was true. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to stay updated on any new developments and any interesting new what the fuck updates. So if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. It makes such a difference, especially for a new podcast like this one. And if any of you have had a crazy what the fuck yourself, have any questions, feedback, or just want to say hey, reach out on either Instagram at WTF_just_happened_, or email me at hello@WTFJustHappened.net. I love hearing from all of you. It makes my day hearing your stories and questions and feedback and all of it. And remember, you don't have to draw any final conclusions as you wonder, what the fuck just happened?